So, okay. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of natural resources and stakeholder engagement processes. And as Joanna couldn't say it, I couldn't say it better than Joanna. So in general, I work with individuals, groups, organizations, and governments to use negotiation and consensus building skills and strategies to advance their interests, improve business, working relationships, and deal with conflict more effectively or more constructively. So these are some of my pictures of my work, from highlands in Peru to the jungle in Ecuador and the coast in Peru as well. That was pre-pandemia, pre-COVID. Now you see all these pictures with that thing in your face, and working with the government and going to different places, from getting a city hall free from some communities that were kind of hijacking the little government palace. And anyway, I will share you more of my work. But the issue with natural resources is that we have global growth, which leads to increased demand for natural resources. And also this switch or change to, oh, we want more copper because we want more efficient energy, and all these new ideas is pushing for more extraction of natural resources. And in the last years, there's more expectations from communities. Communities are more organized, and there's, as I said, an increased pressure on natural resources. So the world has responded with new frameworks, standards, promoting social and environmental performance. There's national legislation, there's international standards, IFC, United Nations guiding principles. And in general, companies have incorporated sustainability into their business model and discourse, and they talk about this. But there's a dissonance between the amount of effort and the result that many of these have so far. In Peru, where I spend most of my time, even though I work in other places in Latin America, there are many projects that has been delayed and blocked because the way some investments projects were managed, and social conflict caused several of these projects be frustrated. And many of these situations and big investment projects, and they say, oh, this Rio Blanco, this area, we want to be free of mining. And there are a lot of organizations. You have people protesting, indigenous groups, because a project supposedly was going to get rid of a couple lagoons or lakes in their area. And there's police confrontation. We want agriculture, we don't want mining, and many of these expressions. And this is going on, is something that is repeated many, many times. In Peru, supposedly we have around like 150 conflicts with mining projects or environmental issues or other issues. But the office where I work in the Sagasti government as responsible of these dialogue tables and supervising or overseeing all these conflicting situations. And there are more than 100 of these. So when we deal with this conflict, we are talking about multiple stakeholders and multiple interests. So many people with many interests, and people are also furious, upset, scream. People organize, and the problem is not that there are multiple stakeholders with many interests, not that there are protests or rallies on the streets, but the problem is how we engage to address these conflicting situations. And we act out our thinking. So the problem is our paradigm, or how we interact with each other to address our differences and conflicts. And many times we have positional arguments and confrontations, and we have this way of thinking, or this either or thinking, I'm right and you're wrong. We play blame games, you are at fault. And all this confrontation produces winners and losers. So our challenge is that positional arguments and confrontations are not dialogue. So we don't listen to understand the other. We just listen to refute, to contradict the other one. And many of the solutions that are attempted are very transactional. It's like people say we try to throw money at the problem, but this doesn't build long-term trusting relationships. So my role as mediator, what I do when I work is, as mediators, we can help reframe these conversations, change the frame of these conversations, change the course of a conversation, turn blame games or debates and arguments into more constructive dialogue, and help find better ways to engage and integrate multiple interests. But first, we need to understand, as well as we can, the problem on the field. So many of these people complain and have positions and interests regarding to, they have fear of possible contamination, impact on water and the environment. People have a sense of belonging and affiliation. They don't want to feel left out because they want to receive economic benefits of the activities that are in their area. And they want to participate in decision-making process, at least in decisions that will affect them. They say, well, they don't listen to us. So the government, the people, the authorities who give authorizations of these projects, they don't ask us what are our real concerns. So we have also a sense of autonomy or freedom that decisions are not imposed on us. So from an analytical point of view, like we are part of our brain that is the more rational, there's a historical distrust, there's a lack of credibility on the information that people provide us, so we don't believe in the information. There are many actors, many stakeholders, but there's no clear representation. And there are lack of spaces and capacities for dialogue. And also there's polarized and interest and needs and priorities. But there's also an emotional part, and people ask themselves saying, hey, will the abuses of the past will continue? Can I believe what they tell me? Will I have a voice in decision-making? Will my rights be respected? Do they really understand my concerns and needs? So I have a colleague, Mary Coben, that works with the CBI that have this ARC approach. It's not the noise ARC. And this is for dignity in dialogue. And he mentioned there are 4 conditions to have dignity in dialogue that allow the parties gain perspective, recognize humanity on the other, and want to listen to the other. And these are the 4 conditions. Acknowledgement. This means that are the people affected feeling that their concerns and aspirations have been deeply heard and acknowledged? And agency. Do they have a sense of agency in terms of how they will solve their problems, on what terms? And participants feel that they have a meaningful sense of influence and control over the process. And also reciprocity, which is, are they experiencing and contributing to reciprocal engagement as a constructive exchange, both in words and actions? So are they contributing and building together the engagement? And finally, clarity, because people want to have a sense of clarity. Is like, do they feel a sense of clarity about the process itself? Do they understand that what will come next? Can they access to this engagement fairly? And how will those steps address their deepest concerns? And there's a link here, and then I will provide these presentations so you can have access to the links and are in some of these slides. So if investment projects want to communities accept or welcome these projects, what the community feel is key. So for a community to welcome a mining investment project positively, the community must believe and feel that it will be much better off than it was before this investment arrived. So the project must be perceived as a good neighbor and a contributor to local development. It must not be seen as risk to local tranquility and as a triggering factors of fears or as a promoter of destruction. And to foster or shift perspectives, first we need to understand those perspectives through a fair process of shared understanding, this dignified dialogue that we are talking about. And people have fears and people have interest, they want to accomplish things. But first, the fear needs to be addressed. Then we can talk about how we can create value. So as mediators, we can help to frame this new paradigm, have better interaction and better processes. And at Harvard University, they say that the way how we define our goals, it drives our results. So if we want to change our outcome of our interaction, we need to change our behavior or our actions or the way how we behave. And the way to change that is first we need to change our assumptions, our mindset, our paradigm. So we need to frame the way how we think. If I see the other as my enemy, my goal will be to defeat them. So I will lose, I will win, and I want you to lose. But if I see the other as my potential partner, it will be more likely that we work together to address the situation. And that's where we can really both win. So we need a different way of thinking. And this is, we need to think on mutual gains. So generating mutual gains between a company and a people affected by its activity or the business is not only possible, but is essential to build long-term trusting relationships. And there are some key principles. We need to engage the parties in the solution. It's not that I will give you the solution. We need to build that solution together. So we need to seek participation, active participation, to work on joint problem solving. And we need to focus on the most important interests and needs. And we need to create options that generate mutual gains, meaning we need to create creative options or solutions that address most or many of these interests and needs. And we always need to act in a way that builds trust and relationships. And I always talk about respect with double T. T for treatment, like treat me as equal. And T for transparency. Don't lie to me. Tell me what you are going to do, or walk the talk, as many say. So maybe Joanna talked to you about this already, but I just want to express that many we argue based on or talk based on positions, which is what we demand, where we request, we say, this is what we want. But we need to go deeper and try to understand what moves us to have a position. We need to understand the needs, the interests, meaning the needs, the concerns, the hopes, the aspirations, our desires and fears and whatever make us to have a position. So we need to ask what for. What do you really care about? What you really want? What's the reason behind or beyond a demand? So what do we really want to satisfy? But it's not only that we need to think about our interests. We need to think about the interests of the other party. And it's not philanthropy. It's not, you're so nice. You think about the other one. Well, it's not that. It's because it's convenient for us that the other one is satisfied with the result of our engagement and with the result of our agreement. But because if they are not satisfied, I'm not saying super happy, but at least satisfied, if they don't believe that they gain something in this interaction, they will not fulfill or follow through the commitments. So how we create these mutual gains, how we engage, we move, as we say, we move from positions to needs and interest. We turn these needs and interests into options for mutual gain. That's how we think together and we brainstorm. And then we think about objective criteria to turn these options into agreements, finding out or talking about why this potential agreement or these options that that try to satisfy the interests are the best option, because it's beyond our contest of will. It's not because I want to do this or because you want to do that. It's how we can agree on something that it will give us a sense of fairness on how we distributed the value that we created. And then we need to think about predictable surprises, because many times we shake our hands, we say we reach an agreement, and when we go our way, and then later on, we may run into situations that the agreement was not fulfilled, or I may think that the other party is not doing what he or she said that they were going to be doing. So we need to think in advance about potential challenges on implementation. So basically, we need to think about these 4 questions. So to move from positions to talk about interest, we need to ask why or what for. To get into creative mode, we need to ask this what if we do X, Y, and Z? Is not that we are going to reach agreements at this time. We are just brainstorming. We're putting ideas on the table, as crazy as they are, because this will trigger other good ideas. But nothing that we say is a compromise or is a promise. It's just we're tossing out ideas. Then we will have a time to find commitment, and that's when we are going to talk later on what make it fair, why we should select this option, or this other option. And then we need to think what might go wrong. So we need to change, as I said, our paradigm, and we also need to change our attitude, not only to collaborate, but also to connect as human beings, because we also have an emotional interest. We all have the need to feel understood, appreciated, respected, and have a sense of belonging or affiliation, or not feeling excluded. And as I said earlier, we need to have this sense of autonomy, and we don't want decisions to be imposed on us. I have a friend, Will Merrick, who talk about dignity in dialogue. He says that our mind or our brains make such gaps between us that they can only be crossed by holding hands with the heart and the mind. And I have another colleague in Ireland, she's Andrea O'Neill, and she said that if you are authentic and genuine, your heart is open. And when your heart is open, you connect with people. So I will talk briefly about this consensus building process, so how we engage multiple parties to address our interests and concerns. But as mediator, we do some, like, before you sit at the table, you need to put the table. You need to put the silverware, the plates, the tablecloth. And if anybody wants to do a dialogue process, the smart thing to do is to do a stakeholder assessment of the interest and the situation, in order to see if how likely is to have a successful dialogue. So a mediator is contracted by somebody who says, we want to do this dialogue process. So the mediator, we will prepare a protocol of questions to understand the interest of these multiple parties, that the convener, the individual, the organization that wants to do this consensus building process, he needs to say, these are the multiple parties, these are the actors, the stakeholders that I think are involved in the situation. So part of the work of the mediator is to connect with all these people, interview all these people, and then maybe identify additional stakeholders that needs to be contacted. Then after this, we prepare a report and we design a potential dialogue process. And if certain conditions are accurate, we identify the right parties. We have clear definition of the interest and the issues at stake. We have a work plan. We identify a facilitator that might be the same mediator that practicing this stakeholder engagement. Then we engage in a process. Then we decide if we go forward or not with this consensus building process. And one of the things that we do at the beginning is we do this joint fact-finding process, because many times people start arguing on getting confrontations because they are looking at different information and they don't have the same information. Or as I said earlier, people don't believe in the information that is presented. So how can we create or generate information that everybody can believe or trust? And after we do that, then we engage in this mutual gains approach to negotiate agreements. So we reach agreements and then we implement those agreements, thinking about these predictable surprises, what things could happen that could prevent the implementation of the agreements. One brief process that I want to share with you is this consensus building process that I did with the Warinza project in Ecuador that began with this stakeholder assessment. So I spent in this area that is in Ecuador, up in the border with Peru. A mining company acquire or obtain or purchase many lots, like pieces of land, and they have a conflict during 11 years. After 11 years, leaders of the community went to talk with the general manager, and the general manager called me saying, "Hey, Luis, can you help me to train these people that are coming, explain this different approach to conversations, not talking about position, but about interest, and see if we can reach some agreement, but we cannot give these titles land back to the community." So they came to Peru. We had an amazing conversation. They said, "Well, we want you, Peruvian guy, mediator, go to our community and explain to us what you share with us, the indigenous leaders, of what's this interest that the company have. Is it possible or not have a dialogue with the company? Is it possible or not develop a project here? But we want you to listen to our concerns and our fears and our hopes and our aspirations." So I went to Ecuador. I went to this little area. I went there January and February. I went 2 times, and I attempted to get in for a 3rd time. I was prevented by another organization to get into the field. But I talked with many of these people. We did even a visioning process in which I asked them the question of, if you had no conflict with this company, what would you like to see as a better future for your community if you could work together with this company? And they start listing all these things, and as you see, playing with Post-its and all that stuff. But they said, yes, we want to talk with them. We want to explore the possibility of reaching agreements, but first they need to give us the land back. And I went to Canada to explain the owners of this company what was the situation. These are other pictures of other indigenous groups on that area, but they were not in the area of influence of this company. But there was an experience being shared in one of the conference in Canada called PDAC. I met people from the board of this company, and then the company said, we want to talk with them, with the community, and we can even talk about the possibility of giving this land back to the community. And in May 2018, we formalized a dialogue process that we started informally in April in 2018. So we met a lot of community leaders. And in August 2018, we went to the community and explained that the company may be willing to transfer the ownership of these lands and give back to the community. And in November 2018, we went to explain this to the government of Ecuador. And then in the same month, the company decided to give back this land to the community with no condition. They were not conditioning, oh, I will give you the land back, but you let us work here. They were saying, yes, we are going to do work here. We are going to give you the land back, and then we can talk about the possibility of trying to talk about this potential project. But first, we're going to heal our wounds, giving you this land back to you guys. And in December 2018, the company presented a proposal, a memorandum of understanding, and in 2018, the community said, okay, we want to do joint exploration, but it's like we're going to work together as a joint fact-finding process with that frame to identify or understand the potential, the economic, mineral, and potential benefits under our communities, under the surface. So I wrote this experience in Spanish, and there's a link there. And I also wrote this book of consensus building, and that's it, but that's in Spanish. Now let me share another short experience of this, how we use a joint fact-finding process to gather information and conduct a water study, a groundwater and underground and surface water studies. This was in Peru. In the south of Peru, you have a region that is called Tacna, which is in the limit with Chile. And Southern Peru Copper Corporation is a mining company that has been operating this open pit copper since the 60s in a region that is called Jorge Basadre, a mine called Toquepala. So the Tacna region is in the southern part of Peru, and the beginning of the Atacama Desert, the driest desert in the world. And this condition generates limitations in the use of water resources for daily activities and productions. However, despite the water stress, the population of these areas is mainly dedicated to agriculture or livestock. So the Jorge Basadre province, where the mining company activity is located, is bordered with another province called Candarave. And in the Candarave province, there's no mining activities, but the mining company uses the water it takes from the Locumba Basin to carry out its activities. So the mine activity is in the region of Jorge Basadre, but the mining company takes the water for the mining project from this Candarave province. But Candarave province is not considered within the area of direct or indirect influence, so it is one of the least royalties received in Tacna, so they don't receive much of the money. And in 2011, when I came back to Peru after doing my working on my grad studies in the US, I came back to Peru in 2011, helping the Water National Authority. The company announced its intention to expand its processing plant and announced the project's expansion of the Toquepala concentration and regrowth of the Honda Creek to double its daily production. The company has permit from the Water National Authority for the use of surface and groundwater for its operations, and the executives of the company assured that they did not need to use more water for the expansion of their processing plant because they would reuse the water that comes from the tailing. But the Candarave farmers expressed their concerns to the press, asking the company in writing to be informed and to negotiate benefits for Candarave and to guarantee the water supply. Then the company refused to have dialogue with the community, with these individuals, saying that the Candarave province was not in the project area of influence. So the social conflict escalated and affected governance of the region. In September 2011, protesters rejected the public hearing to present the project's environmental impact assessment. Violent clashes with the national police took place with dozens of people wounded. So thousands of citizens from different parts of the Tacna, of all this kind of larger region, stood in solidarity with the Candarave's demands. And new claims against other mining companies were added, and the blocking of main roads continued. And in October 2011, the Tacna authorities convened a dialogue process, a dialogue table, in which local authorities, the mining company, and the national government participated to address the issues of environmental contamination, water resources, and social investment for this region. But a few months later, in February 2012, after a tense dynamic and positional interaction, this confrontation I've been talking about, between the parties and the representative of Tacna, the governor of Tacna, rejected the offer of the national government, and the dialogue with the Prime Minister's office was suspended. And few months later, in August, with new officials in the Prime Minister's office and the new approaches to dialogue, it was decided to form the dialogue table to address the water, environmental, and development proposals in the province of Candarave. With the participation of different sectors of the state, the government, the administration, mining and energy ministry, environmental ministry, local authorities, also the water national authority, the agricultural minister was being part of this, and also grassroots social organizations. And few months later, in 2013, after several months of dialogue, the parties reached an agreement. And the company was going to give a fund for development of 255 million soles. So you need to divide that by 4. So more than $50 million for the next 10 years. And some of this money, 150 million soles, was going to be provided for the construction of water infrastructure. And 10 of these millions were necessary to carry out these water studies in the Locumba River Basin. And the terms of reference for the water study will be jointly developed. So there's all this money to do water infrastructure, but people don't really know how much water they have, like surface and groundwater. So the company promised not to apply for any additional license for the use of surface or groundwater. So they reached an agreement. The company was going to provide funds for the development of the community. And because you have this stress on water, or you don't have much water, and people still working on agricultural as farmers, they say, we're going to build water infrastructure, and we are going to work on this water study to know how much water we have, and what will be the best way to use the water that we have. So in September 2013, the terms of reference for the water studies were jointly developed and approved by the ANA, with the National Water Authority, the Candarave Municipality, and the Candarave Irrigation Users Board. This was on the dialogue table. And in July 2014, the parties jointly appointed a consulting firm and a supervising firm that carry out the water study. And the consulting firm was the Consorcio Rio Locumba, and the supervising firm of the work that the consulting firm was going to do is the Suez company. And in July 2014 to December 2015, the consulting firm conducted this water study and developed the hydraulic plan and the basin management plan. And in August, this was August 2017, the water study was approved and the hydraulic plan and the basin management plan was approved too. But the good thing about this water study is that it was used or implemented as a participatory process to produce credible information as this joint fact-finding process. So the key of this dialogue process and the following activities was the way how the water study and the hydraulic plan and basin management plan was developed. So at the beginning, this had 4 phases. At the beginning, we have a preliminary activities and communication plan informing to local communities that this study was going to be implemented. There was some guide information and diagnosis of management of water resources of the basin, and a study of viable solutions alternatives to cover water deficits, and then the plan to the management of water plan for the basin. This study had a social component because it was very participatory, and they have a very technical component, and there was many work, guide information from prior studies, like from 50 years old studies, till the field work to explore the current hydrological, hydrogeological, and hydrometeorological, and hydraulic current situation. And the objective was to secure the water in the province of Candarave and also Jorge Basadre. But we need to know how much water we have. And this is how we work, gather information from local communities from their interests, the concerns, the needs that they have for water. And we collect many information from the local communities. And so the key was this technical scientific component and the social component. There was a lot of desk work and reviewing of information available from 1950 and technical and social field work to validate cabinet information. So participatory work was done from the beginning of the study, which concluded with the gathering of information from the perspective and experience of the population. So this hydraulic plan and the basin management plan is the result of the social component and technical scientific component of the diagnosis of the current situation. So we identify the problems, solutions with the community, with the people, to build or develop this water management plan. And at the end, they have different interventions from projects and programs to cover the water deficit. And we had like a plan for investing money from today to the next 5 years, next from the 6th to the 10th year, and then from the 11th and the 15th year. So the key lessons from these 2 experiences that listen to understand, not to refute. That's what we need to do. But most importantly, we need to listen to connect with the other as human beings, addressing emotional interest and the need to be appreciated and valued, and they need to be respected, and to have a sense of belonging or affiliation, and the sense of autonomy without being subject to imposition. And we need to generate information jointly with this joint fact-finding process that results in credible and trusting information. So we need to engage people as much as we can. And third, even mining projects or investment projects that have different cycles. We need to frame those cycles within a consensus building process to generate long-term relationships of trust and mutual gains. from the beginning, like early intervention from the stakeholder assessment in the area of where you want to develop a project. This is an opportunity to build a relationship of trust until the facilitation of collaborative conversations and dialogues for monitoring and compliance of agreements. I wrote some of these frameworks in a book that was written by a colleague, Cesar Sainz, called Creating Shared Value to Get Social License to Operate in the Extractive Industry. And I talk about these type of relationships, these ways to approach negotiation in the chapter 6, saying, hey, the extractive game triangle model. Do we need to change the mining game for development? And we don't use this just for addressing conflicting situations. I help to develop a model for development with social, environmental, political, and economical viability or feasibility in a district in another region in Peru. And this is kind of a flow chart from identifying the needs of the community, then doing a joint fact-finding to see what kind of things or potential solutions we can create with technical expertise, with social engagement to address those needs and concerns. And then we engage in a consensus building process with public sector and the private sector to see who can put how much in order to address these concerns of the communities. But as I always say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. This is Peter Drucker, one of the fathers of modern management. And in my word, this means that it's useless to have the right tools and processes and strategies if we have the wrong paradigm or the wrong culture. So we need to think about mutual gains and better engage. And even though I'm in Mexico, that's a picture of my city in Lima, Peru. So thank you very much. That's my phone. You can WhatsApp me, you can email me, or as Joanna said, you can find me in LinkedIn. So that's it, my dear colleague.